Good evening, and welcome to the Yes Tale Story Channel. My name is Jess, and I'm your host this evening, as we journey deep into the lush African rainforest with a story from L. Frank Baum. On this channel, we tell you stories from all over the world, some famous, some forgotten. And when the story finishes, the sound of the fire keeps playing, helping you fall into a soothing sleep. If you like this channel, feel free to subscribe or give us a like. But for now, make sure you're warm and snug. Clear your mind from any worries. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. On one of the upper branches of the Congo River lived an ancient and aristocratic family of hippopotamuses, which boasted a pedigree dating back beyond the days of Noah, beyond the existence of mankind, far into the dim ages when the world was anew. They had always lived on the banks of this river, so every curve and sweep of its waters, every pit and shallow of its bed, every rock and stump and wallow on its bank was as familiar to them as their own mothers. And they are living there still, I suppose. Not long ago, the queen of this tribe of hippopotamuses had a child, which she named Keo, because it was so chubby and round. To make sure you're not misled, I will explain that in the hippopotamus language, Keo, properly translated, means chubby and lazy, instead of chubby and round. However, no one told the queen about this error, because her tusks were monstrous, long and sharp, and she thought Keo was the sweetest baby in the world. He was indeed all right for a hippopotamus. He rolled and played in the soft mud of the riverbank, and waddled inland to nibble the leaves of the wild cabbage that grew there, and was happy and contented from morning till night. And he was the jolliest hippopotamus that this ancient family had ever known. His little red eyes were forever twinkling with fun, and he laughed his merry laugh at all times, whether there was anything to laugh at or not. Therefore, the people who lived in that region called him Ippy, the jolly one, although they didn't dare come close to him because of his fierce mother and his equally fierce uncles and aunts and cousins, who lived in a vast colony up on the riverbank. And while these people, who lived in little villages scattered among the trees, didn't dare to openly attack the royal family of hippopotamuses, they were amazingly fond of eating hippopotamus meat whenever they could get their hands on it. This was no secret to the hippopotamuses, and when any one of them managed to catch these animals alive, they had a trick of riding them through the jungle as if they were horses, thus reducing them to a condition of slavery. Therefore, having these things in mind, whenever the tribe of hippopotamuses smelt the oily odour of the people, they would charge upon them furiously, and if by chance they overtook one of the enemy, they would rip him with their sharp tusks and stamp on him with their huge feet. It was continual warfare between the hippopotamuses and the people. Gui lived in one of the little villages. He was the son of the chief's brother and grandson of the village sorcerer, the latter being an old man known as the Boneless Wonder, because he could twist himself into as many coils as a serpent, and had no bones to hinder him bending his flesh into any position. This made him walk in a wobbly fashion, but the people had great respect for him. Gui's hut was made of branches of trees stuck together with mud, and his clothing consisted of a grass mat tied round his middle. But his relationship to the chief and the sorcerer gave him a certain dignity, and he was much addicted to solitary thought. Perhaps it was natural that these thoughts frequently turned to his enemies, the hippopotamuses, and the best ways of capturing them. Finally, he completed his plans and set about digging a great pit in the ground, midway between two sharp curves of the river. When the pit was finished, he covered it with small branches and threw earth on top of them, smoothing the surface so artfully that no one would suspect there was a big hole underneath. Then Gui laughed softly to himself and went home to eat supper. That evening, the queen said to Keo, who was becoming a fine child for his age, "I wish you to run across the bend and ask your Uncle Nicky to come here. I have found a strange plant, and I want him to tell me if it's good to eat." The Jolly One laughed heartily as he started on his errand, for he felt as important as a boy does when he's sent to the corner shop for the first time to buy a cake. "Gook, gook, 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 gook," was the way he laughed. And if you think a hippopotamus does not laugh this way, you just have to listen to one and you'll find that I'm right. He crawled out of the mud where he was wallowing and tramped away through the bushes. And the last his mother heard as she lay half in, half out of the water was his musical gook, 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 dying away in the distance. Keo was in such a happy mood that he barely noticed where he stepped, so he was as much surprised when, in the middle of a laugh, the ground gave way beneath him, and he fell to the bottom of Gui's deep pit. He was not badly hurt, but had bumped his nose severely as he went down, so he stopped laughing and began to ponder how he could get out again. Then he found the walls were higher than his head and that he was a prisoner. So he laughed a little at his own misfortune, and the laughter soothed him to sleep, so that he snored all through the night until daylight. When Gui peered over the edge of the pit next morning, he exclaimed, "Well, it is Ippy, the Jolly One." Keo recognized the scent of a man and tried to raise his head enough to bite him. Seeing that, Gui spoke in the hippopotamus language, which he had learned from his grandfather, the sorcerer. "Have peace, little one, you are my captive." "Yes, I will have a piece of your leg if I can reach it," retorted Keo, and then he laughed at his own joke. Gook, 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 gook. But Gui, being a thoughtful man, went away without further talk, and did not return until the following morning. When he again leaned over the pit, Keo was so weak from hunger that he could hardly laugh at all. "Do you give up?" asked Gui, "or do you still wish to fight?" "What will happen if I give up?" inquired Keo. The man scratched his head, perplexed. "It's hard to say, Ippy. You're too young to work, and if I kill you for food, I will lose your tusks, which are not yet fully grown. Why, oh Jolly One, did you fall into my hole? I wanted to catch your mother or one of your uncles." "Gook, gook, 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 gook," laughed Keo. You must let me go after all, for I am no use to you." "That I will not do," declared Gui, "unless," he added, as an afterthought, "you will make a bargain with me." "Let me hear about the bargain then, for I am hungry," said Keo. "I will let you go if you swear by the tusks of your grandfather that you will return to me in a year and a day and become my prisoner again." The youthful hippopotamus paused to think, for he knew it was a serious thing to swear by the tusks of his grandfather. But he was very hungry, and a year and a day seemed a long time away. So he said, with another careless laugh, "Very well, if you let me go, I swear by the tusks of my grandfather to return to you in a year and a day and become your prisoner." Guye was very pleased, for he knew that in a year and a day Keo would be almost fully grown. So he started digging away one end of the pit and filled it up with earth until he had made an incline which would allow the hippopotamus to climb out. Keo was very pleased when he found himself up on the earth again, that he indulged in a merry fit of laughter, after which he said, "Goodbye, Guye. You will see me again in a year and a day." Then he waddled away towards the river to see his mother and have his breakfast, and Guye returned to his village. During the months that followed, as the man lay in his hut or hunted in the forest, he heard at times the far-away "gook, gook, gook, gook" of the laughing hippopotamus, but he only smiled to himself and thought, "A year and a day will soon pass." Now when Keo returned to his mother safe and sound, every member of his tribe was filled with joy, for the Jolly One was a general favourite. But when he told them that he must become a slave of the man again in a year and a day, they began to wail and weep, and so many were their tears that the river rose several inches. Of course, Keo only laughed at their sorrow, but the tribe called a great meeting, and the matter was discussed seriously. "Having sworn by the tusks of his grandfather," said Uncle Nicky, "he must keep his promise, but it is our duty to try and rescue him from death or a life of slavery in some way." Everyone agreed, but no one could think of any method of saving Keo from his fate. So months passed, during which all the royal hippopotamuses were sad and gloomy, except the Jolly One himself. Finally, only a week of freedom remained for Keo, and his mother, the Queen, became so nervous and worried that another meeting was called. By this time the laughing hippopotamus had grown to enormous size, and measured nearly 15 feet long and 6 feet high, while his sharp tusks were whiter and harder than those of an elephant. "Unless something is done to save my child," said the mother, "I will die of grief." Some of her relatives started making foolish suggestions, but then Uncle Nep, who was a very wise and a very big hippopotamus, said, "We must go to Glinkomok and ask for his help." The tribe went silent, for it was a bold thing to face the mighty Glinkomok, but the mother's love was equal to any heroism. "I will go to him myself, if Uncle Nep will accompany me," she said quickly. Uncle Nep thoughtfully patted the soft mud with his front foot and wagged his short tail leisurely from side to side. "We have always been obedient to Glinkomok and shown him great respect," he said. "Therefore, I fear no danger in facing him, so I will go with you." All the others snorted in approval, being very glad they were not called to go themselves. So the Queen and Uncle Nep, with Keo swimming between them, set out on their journey. They swam up the river all that day and the next until sundown, when they came to a high rocky wall, beneath which was the cave where the mighty Glinkomok lived. This fearful creature was part beast, part man, part fowl, and part fish. It had lived since the world began. Through years of wisdom, it had become part sorcerer, part wizard, part magician, and part fairy. It was unknown to mankind, but the ancient beasts knew and feared it. The 3 hippopotamuses paused before the cave, with their front feet on the bank and their bodies in the water, and called in chorus a greeting to Glinkomok. Instantly thereafter, the mouth of the cave darkened, and the creature glided silently towards them. The hippopotamuses were afraid to look at its face and bowed their heads between their legs. "We come, O Glinkomok, to plead for your mercy and friendly assistance," began Uncle Nep. And then he told the story of Keo's capture and how he had promised to return to the man. "He must keep his promise," said the creature in a voice that sounded like a sigh. The mother hippopotamus groaned loudly. "But I will prepare him to overcome the man and regain his freedom," continued Glinkomok. Keo laughed. "Lift your right paw," commanded Glinkomok. Keo obeyed, and the creature touched it with its long, hairy tongue. Then it held 4 skinny hands over Keo's bowed head and mumbled words in a language unknown to man or beast or fowl or fish. After this, it spoke again in hippopotamese. "Your skin has now become so tough that no man can hurt you. Your strength is greater than that of 10 elephants. Your foot is so swift that you can outrun the wind. Your wit is sharper than the bullhorn. Let the man fear, but drive fear from your own breast forever, for of all of your race, you are the mightiest." Then the terrible Glinkomok leaned over, and Keo felt its fiery breath scorch him as it whispered some further instructions in his ear. The next moment it glided back into its cave, followed by the loud thanks of the 3 hippopotamuses, who slid into the water and immediately began their journey home. The mother's heart was full of joy, and Uncle Nep shivered once or twice as he remembered the glimpse he'd caught of Glinkomok. But Keo was as jolly as possible, and, not content to swim with his dignified elders, he dived under their bodies, raced all around them, and laughed merrily every inch of the way home. Then all the tribe held high jinks and praised the mighty Glinkomok for befriending their queen's son. And when the day came for the Jolly One to give himself up to the man, they all kissed him goodbye without the single fear for his safety. Keo left in good spirits, and they could hear his laughing "gook, gook, 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 gook" long after he was out of sight in the jungle. Guye had counted the days and knew when to expect Keo, but he was astonished at the monstrous size to which his captive had grown and congratulated himself on the wise bargain he'd made. And Keo was so fat that Guye decided to eat him, that is, as much as he possibly could, and then he would trade off the remains to his fellow villagers. So he took a knife and tried to stick it in the hippopotamus, but the skin was so tough, the knife was blunted against it. Then he tried other means, but Keo remained unhurt. And now indeed the Jolly One laughed his most gleeful laugh. Throughout the forest echoed the guk 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 guk. And Gui decided not to kill him, since that was impossible, but to use him as a beast of burden instead. He mounted upon Keo's back and commanded him to march. So Keo trotted briskly through the village, his little eyes twinkling with merriment. The other people in the village were delighted with Gui's captive and begged permission to ride upon the Jolly One's back. So Gui bargained with them for bracelets and shell necklaces and little gold ornaments until he had acquired quite a heap of trinkets. Then a dozen men climbed up on Keo's back to enjoy a ride, and the one nearest his nose cried out, "Run, Mud Dog, run!" And Keo ran. Swift as the wind he strode, away from the village, through the forest and straight up the river bank. The men howled with fear. The Jolly One roared with laughter, and on and on and on they rushed. Then up ahead, on the opposite side of the river, appeared the black mouth of Glinkomok's cave. Keo dashed into the water, dived to the bottom, and left the people struggling to swim out. But Glinkomok had heard Keo's laughter and knew what to do. When the Jolly One rose to the surface and blew the water from his throat, there was no man to be seen. Keo returned alone to the village, and Gui asked with surprise, "Where are my brothers?" "I don't know," answered Keo. "I took them far away, and they stayed where I left them." Gui would have asked more questions, but he had a new crowd of men waiting impatiently to ride on the back of the laughing hippopotamus. They paid the price and climbed to their seats, after which the foremost said, "Run, Mud Wallower, run!" And Keo ran as before and carried them to the mouth of Glinkomok's cave and returned alone. But now Gui became anxious to the fate of his friends, for he was the only man left in his village. So he mounted the hippopotamus and cried, "Run, River Hog, run!" Keo laughed his jolly "Guk guk 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 guk" and ran with the speed of the wind. But this time he ran straight to the river bank where his own tribe lived, and when he reached it, he waded into the river, dived to the bottom, and left Gui floating in the middle of the stream. The man began swimming towards the river bank, but there he saw Uncle Nep and half the royal tribe waiting to stamp him into the soft mud. So he turned towards the left bank, but there stood the Queen Mother and Uncle Nicky, red-eyed and angry, waiting to tear him with their tusks. Gui then uttered loud screams of terror, and spying the Jolly One who swam near him, he cried, "Save me, Keo, save me, and I will release you from slavery." "That is not enough," laughed Keo. "I will serve you all my life," screamed Gui. "I will do everything you ask of me." "Will you return to me in a year and a day and become my captive if I allow you to escape?" asked Keo. I will," cried Gui. "Swear it by the bones of your grandfather," commanded Keo, remembering that men have no tusks to swear by. And Guyi swore by the bones of his grandfather. Then Keo swam to him, and the man clambered up on his back again. In this fashion they came to the bank, where Keo told his mother and all the tribe of the bargain that he'd made with Guye, who was to return in a year and a day and become his slave. The man was permitted to depart in peace, and once more the Jolly One lived happily with his own people. When a year and a day had passed, Keo began watching for the return of Guye, but he did not come, not then or ever after. For the man had made a bundle of his bracelets and shell necklaces and little gold ornaments, and had travelled many miles into another country, where nobody knew of the ancient and royal tribe of hippopotamuses. And thanks to his riches, he became a great chief, and people bowed down before him. By day he was proud and swaggering, but at night he tumbled and tossed in his bed and could not sleep. His conscience troubled him, for he had sworn on the bones of his grandfather, but his grandfather didn't have any bones.